The BetterMan podcast is sponsored by Aroga Drive. Drive is the only natural product that provides sustained energy and helps boost your mood. Check out betterman-drive.com.
And the problem with the system oftentimes is it wants to make everybody the same. What's happening, fam? We are here at the BetterMan podcast. As usual, I'm surrounded by my favorite people. Come on, D, what's good? Tell me one good thing from the week, my man.
I got a couple, man. Had a chance to travel to Georgia this weekend.
Come on.
For the Spark Conference. There was over 650 men that BetterMan had an opportunity to speak to.
That's pastors, right? That's the Georgia Southern Baptist Convention?
Yeah.
I bet them Georgia Southern Baptist pastors are wild.
Hey, man, them boys was, I don't know if they were hype on Georgia football coming back or the fact that BetterMan was in the building, but had an opportunity to talk with them about winning men back to the church.
Come on.
So me and Stephen DeGeorge, who's an ambassador for BetterMan. So, dude, it's been a good week. We've been all over the place.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Manny, what's one good thing from your week, brother? So good to see you,
Yeah,
dude.
it's good to see you. I think the last time I wasn't around for filming, I was in South Asia. And that to me is the highlight. Just getting to spend some time there, seeing people who are coming to Christ in an area that it's kind of illegal to be a Christian. And so just seeing how God is at work around the world. To me, always, I love looking outside of my bubble here in the States and in my life and seeing what God is doing around the world is inspiring. And I love it. I love what we get to do. So
come on. If you haven't checked out World Link Ministries, you got to check out World Link, Manny Fernandez, what they're doing with church planning and pastors, equipping, training, sending out. Man, it's mind-blowing. Love what you do. Manny, Brother Isaac.
Hey.
My guy. You're like the most favorite guest on the BetterMan podcast.
I appreciate that.
That's
Very
why we
humbling.
keep bringing you back, bro. You like a regular now.
Listen, I enjoy coming and being around you guys.
Come
You're
on,
on the
it's like
team.
remember that old television show Cheers?
Oh, yeah.
When Norm walked in, everybody said Norm.
Where everybody
when you
knows
walk
your
in,
name.
it's like I said.
Yeah.
Come on, what's one good thing from the last week?
Oh man, intentionality. I got time to spend with my queen and my kids.
Yeah.
So I separate time for them and just being able to be intentional and not be distracted by life, but carve out that time and give them what they need because I need it too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. I feel bad, bro. You talked about Georgia Baptist Convention, crushing it. You're in Southeast Asia, putting your life on the line, leading people to Christ. You use the word queen, right? I need to start calling my wife that, being intentional. I have not had the best week.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Tell us about it, though.
My wife called, and my 3-year-old got kicked out of his pre-K school.
Oh wow. 3.
What are we doing?
3-year-old.
3 years old.
Is that
3
Ollie
years
or
old.
Calvin?
That's Oliver.
Oliver James.
Calvin in the kindergarten. Calvin crushing it, bro.
Hey.
Let me tell you why Calvin crushing it. Because Calvin does whatever he's told.
Right.
So
That's why he crushes it, right?
Yeah, see, Ollie got kicked out because of them initials, OJ. Hey, I'm just saying. Tighten him up, Harp.
This school's racist, bro. I'm gonna tell him. Is that what you're saying? No, they he doesn't listen. So they called and said, hey, you have to come get your son. Basically, we're kicking him out of school. When asked why, I was told that there's too many kids in the class, which A, isn't my problem. But B, I was told he's super intelligent. And I love when people lead with the soft compliment.
Yeah.
Because you know a hard blow is about to come.
Oh, it's coming.
That's a sales tactic,
Right.
bro. They talking to the wrong
Yeah.
one, right? He's super intelligent, but he cannot regulate himself. And immediately I thought of regulators.
Mount
up. And I said, what do you mean he can't regulate himself? And, I'm 42. I have trouble regulating myself. And they said, well, he doesn't take naps when we tell him to take naps. He doesn't eat his lunch when we tell him to eat his lunch. And he has a hard time listening.
Yeah.
So basically he's being defiant, which I don't allow in my house. I talked to him about that. But at the end of the day, he's 3 years old,
Yeah.
right? He doesn't want to take a nap. I'm not saying 3-year-olds shouldn't take a nap. I'm not saying it's bad for 3-year-olds to take a nap. And he's almost 4. I'll give him that. He's almost 4. But he doesn't take a nap. He doesn't take a nap in my house.
Yeah.
I mean, the kid's got a motor.
Right.
And he just goes. right? So I dove into this, and this is from my guy Anthony Bradley, who used to be at the Colson Center. Dude's a genius. If you're not following Anthony Bradley, you have to check him out. But these are statistics from his latest talk he gave, I think in DC. For every 100 elementary girls, okay, for every 100 elementary aged girls, 145 boys repeat kindergarten.
Wow.
168 boys will be diagnosed with a communication disorder. 180 boys will abuse drugs and alcohol.
In kindergarten?
No, just as they get older in life.
Oh, gotcha.
With kindergarten, we're talking about an epidemic.
I'm just saying. What we talking about?
What school we going to?
Yeah, right. School of Hard Knocks.
For every 100 girls, 207 boys will be classified as having a learning disability.
Wow.
ADHD, ADD, can't regulate themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For every 100 girls, 318 boys will die by an overdose as they get older. 3 times, bro. For every 100 girls, 237 boys will be diagnosed with ADHD. 2.5 times. For every 100 girls, 240 boys get suspended from school. 291 boys get expelled from school, apparently including pre-K school.
Right.
For every 100 girls, 355 boys in public schools classified as emotionally disturbed.
Wow. Yeah.
And this is where all this ends. This is the dark side of these statistics, as if they're not already dark. For every 100 girls, boys over 14 are 4 times more likely to die by suicide.
Wow.
We literally have an institution, an academic institution, that is failing boys. Particularly, it's failing young boys, little boys, like my 3-year-old, who has a motor, who goes, who doesn't want to take naps, and because he doesn't fit into that system, they literally expelled him.
Wow.
You know, to where my wife, of course, my wife's emotional, right? She's taking it personal, like it's something we've done.
Right.
But I said, babe, it ain't nothing we've done. I said, they're trying to raise a pacifist, and I'm trying to raise a pirate. That's the difference.
Absolutely.
That's the difference,
Right.
right? And the reality is, you know, he just did not fit that system. My other boys fit the system because they get in line, they don't ask questions, they just go along to get along, which, by the way, is not a good thing. I wish they had a little bit more of a rebellious spirit in them, but they don't. Now, Oliver, my youngest, he a stone cold killer, bro.
Yeah. So all of those stats that you just mentioned, why boys? Why are boys like that? Why are the numbers so much higher?
Yeah, well, I think it's God's design.
Yeah.
Boys and girls were created differently.
Absolutely.
And because we have an academic system that caters towards girls, it's set up for girls to succeed, and they have been since Title IX.
Yeah.
Prior to Title IX, the academic gap between boys and girls was 13 points favoring boys. And there needed to be some equality in that. There needed, like
Right.
the gap needed to be closed. I'm giving you that.
Yeah.
Since Title IX to today, the academic gap is 14 points. It's swung the other way, though, now in favor of girls. Not only did we not fix the problem, we made it worse.
Yeah.
We made it worse. Our academic institutions, learning centers, even churches are really catered towards women. It's women best learn, girls best learn in those environments, and boys are suffering. And I've been reading these statistics forever. I just never had it hit home.
Yeah.
Until the preschool calls and says, hey, your son can't regulate himself, which translates, he won't take a nap when we tell him to take a nap, so he's out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
It's a huge problem. And I used to work in the educational system as well for 11 years. As an administrator, started off as a school social worker and then moved into the administrative piece.
Come on.
And really what you're talking about, brother, is compliance. Because they don't comply, right, then they call themselves, they're unable to regulate because they won't comply. And that's really the big problem right there, is because instead of making them want to comply, we have to talk about calibration. each one of us calibrate differently.
Come on.
And you got to give the environment and set the environment to where I can calibrate the way I need to. You can calibrate the way you need to, instead of us all complying to one system. That's the problem. Give me room to calibrate. And that might look like giving your son an opportunity to kind of burn off some of that energy in the morning so that he's able to then partake in some of the lessons. Because the lesson may be the same again, but the approach has to be different.
Let's go. Calibration
yeah.
versus compliance.
Yes.
So you saying ain't nothing wrong with Ali? It's
No.
something wrong with the system.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's 3 years old. There's no reason why he should be getting expelled.
And what's the first thing they told my wife? You got to get him tested. So my wife's calling me crying. She's like, well, I got to set up the testing. I said, testing for what?
Exactly.
What are we getting him tested for? He won't take a nap, so we got to get him tested?
You get him tested for documentation, because what happens later is something that's called an IEP, an individualized education plan.
Yep.
Right? But when I was working in the schools, I called them individualized execution plans.
Come on.
Because what ends up happening is you get them tested early so that paper trail follows. So when he gets to a certain age and certain grade level, now it's easier to transfer that testing to an IEP.
So there's just a way to track him.
Absolutely.
And put him in a box.
And label him for,
And put him in a box. And what happens? A disproportionate amount of little boys get diagnosed with emotionally disturbed, ADHD, et cetera.
Absolutely.
And they get pushed to the back of the classroom while these girls get pushed to the front of the classroom. And we have what we have today.
Yeah.
And we see it all over second ed, higher ed.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why they're graduating 2, 3, 4. When you get into professional degrees, lawyers, doctors, pharmacists, psychologists, it's 4 to 1, 5 to 1, girls to guys.
Yeah.
This is all stemming from this, bro.
Right.
But even you just said it, right? You're 42 and you have a hard time regulating. So imagine clearly a child who can articulate himself verbally in the manner in which say, hey, to the teacher, I need time to process what I'm feeling at this particular moment. So if you have a difficult time regulating, and then we're lumping them in this emotional disturbance category, right? What does that say? We all have some emotional disturbance. We've all been disturbed by some emotional aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That shouldn't allow us or put us into this box to where we can't necessarily be who we are at the core and who God has designed us to be.
Yeah.
You tell
in
me
this
to
setting.
go. You tell me to go right. I'm gonna turn left.
Yeah.
The Better Man podcast is sponsored by.
When we launched ArtofHomage a few years ago, the goal was to create concepts so good that they led to conversations about Jesus. Whether you're in the mall, the airport, a restaurant, or church, we can express our faith and still look good while we do it.
So let me ask this question. So what was the educational system like when the numbers weren't in favor of boys? Like, was it more of an educational system that allowed boys to function like little boys and to be free? What was it like then?
So think about that. More recess time. So recess and PE is almost eliminated now from school.
Yeah. That's what I went to school for. Eat
That's
and
where you
play.
got the best grades in those classes in lunch.
I mean, it's almost because science tell us girls best learn face to face, boys best learn shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
Like when you go to a lot of military academies today, think West Point, the Citadel Air Force Academy. They know that when you engage your body, for men, it engages their brain. So it's not uncommon for them to have like a ball sitting on the desk. And as they ask Manny a question, they'll throw him the ball. And as he catches it, because of that physical engagement, his mind engages.
Wow.
Right? So it's little subtle things like that. Back to the church. The Sunday morning sermon that we hear every Sunday morning is catered to women. That's how women best learn. That's why men are sitting in there on their phones. That's why men are in there falling asleep.
Or not even coming.
That's why men are not coming.
Yeah.
Right? So the design, this face-to-face learning, best suits girls and women. So one of the biggest differences, instead of recess, we have nap time. That's a problem.
Absolutely.
That's a problem, especially if you're an active little boy. In my home, we have guardrails. Like, it's not like Lord of the Flies,
Right.
right? But when they running around with their shirts off, playing with swords,
Yeah.
they're doing a tree weed. I had to apologize to my neighbor, my 4-year-old weeing on a tree.
Tree wee?
Yeah, the tree wee, where they pee outside.
I never heard of that. A tree wee?
That's what I do that all the time.
Man said, and I'm grown.
I didn't know that's what it was called. So,
Yeah, a tree wee. Okay, go ahead, Art.
But I'm just saying.
that's my contribution to this episode.
well, no, Manny. Seriously, you have boys and girls.
I'm thinking like, because my boys, so I've got one boy who has they both have severe ADHD, and they've been diagnosed that way. But I was just talking about my older boy with my dad yesterday, because we were just looking and we're just talking. The system is not set up for someone who thinks like he does.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. He's a very smart kid, but his grades don't show that.
That's right.
But we see that. We start talking with him. We're like, okay, that makes sense. Everything you're saying, and you're way beyond a lot of your counterparts. But you're just the way they're doing it, the way that the majority can go this way. Right. But for the outliers, they're kind of left on the outskirts, and so I'm thinking about that. My youngest one is more like your kid as well, and he's like Dennis the Menace. Everything has to be broken. He'll go outside pretty much every day, buck naked. And he's just like, in the meet, like I'll bathe him, and then he's out of there as soon as I dry him off, and then he's out. And he's outside. I'm like, dude, you can't do this all the time. Right. You got to come back. We're gonna get called. And so, anyway, so I'm thinking about those things. I'm also thinking though, what are we supposed to do about that? A lot of the guys listening aren't gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna start my own school.
Right.
Or so like, what do you guys think would be something that we can do if the school is catered this way towards women? There's a lot of things we can't change right now.
Sure.
And there's a lot of stuff that we've got going on. It's like, okay, even if I wanted to, I don't know what I can do in that area. So what do we do? What do you guys think we do at home as men raising our kids?
Well, one thing, since COVID, the amount of parents who are homeschooling has shot up by more than double.
Yeah.
And Isaac, you guys homeschool full time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what type of freedoms does that afford you with your son specifically?
Oh man, that affords tons of freedom.
Yeah.
By way of curriculum, by way of access to certain things, removing limitations off of our kids, not just in their natural environment, but even in their minds. Me and my wife, we control the curriculum, we control the environment, and we also control the atmosphere. And those three things are huge, and our kids respond well to the fact that they have this liberty and not have to comply to certain things. I'm not saying they're walking around ruleless, but what I am saying is they have the freedom and the autonomy to think differently in that space.
Yeah, and this is why most young men today suffer in critical thinking. They can't think. A lot of young men, I shouldn't say most, a lot of young men I meet can't think themselves out of a wet paper bag.
Absolutely.
Well, it's because it's been beaten out of them.
Yeah.
Because of the compliance.
That's right.
Because you're everything is linear. Every step is laid out before you, and all you have to do is comply.
That's right.
Versus, I want to get back to what you said, versus calibrate.
Absolutely.
If we believe in the Imago Dei, which we do, every one of us possesses the image of God, right? But every one of us also possess the nishma, or the breath of God, as it says in the Hebrew, which means we all have unique personalities. God created each of us uniquely.
Right.
Yeah.
And the problem with the system oftentimes is it wants to make everybody the same.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And what happens then is, if you have a unique personality trait, like maybe you are hyperactive, or you have a unique personality trait, or maybe you're withdrawn, all of a sudden that becomes an abnormality, or that becomes a problem, right? And the reality is it's not.
Right.
So to your question, D, one of the things I would do, like if you're listening to the show and you're a public school teacher, a private school teacher, a homeschool, you're a Sunday school teacher, I don't care. My encouragement would be, man, let boys be boys.
Absolutely.
Let them be boys.
But I also just want to say, too, back to your question, Manny, what do we do, right? Because, again, most men are not homeschooling.
That's right.
Most men are out in at work, right, trying to provide for their families. But I think the key thing that we can do is partner with our schools. We all pay school taxes.
Come on.
Yeah.
Right? Whether or not you homeschool or private school or wherever charter school, whatever you do, you're still paying school taxes. So as a school tax paying person of that particular community, it's my responsibility to partner with those schools, public schools. Because what you'll find is, again, as I spent 11 years in administration, it was probably 3-to-1 by way of women principals versus men principals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 3 women principals to every 1 man principal. And if they don't know necessarily as a woman how to allow boys to be boys, us as fathers, especially those who are present in the home and know the makeup and the design of our sons, we have a responsibility to partner with those schools and educate those principals, those are in leadership, that are women, on how boys need to be boys.
That's right.
Right? We have a responsibility to do that.
I was just reading 3 main institutions in a child's life. So church, home, and school.
Yes.
And then if you add to that medicine, so think dentist, doctor, etc., the average little boy, will not encounter a man in an authoritative role until he's 14.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
His Sunday school teacher, his principal, his teacher at school, his doctor, his pediatrician, 9 out of 10 times it's going to be a woman.
Absolutely.
And he will not see a man in an authoritative role, in a position of authority until he's 13, 14 years old.
Now think about what you just said, right? Because as I was doing some research, the emotional anchors for boys shift periodically throughout life. So from birth to 6 years old, the primary source of support and comfort comes from the mom.
Yeah.
Right? And from 7 to 14 years old, that emotional anchor shifts to the father. And if we have so many absentee fathers in single parent homes, when it's time to make that shift or that pivot for that boy or that young man, and when he makes that pivot and he looks over here and there's an absentee father or no figure, quite naturally I'm going to either go back to my mother, who's ill-equipped to help me manage that 7 to 14-year-old stage, or I'm going to go out here in the streets and find a role model of some sort. That's how we got this whole gang epidemic, right? Where we're really looking for acceptance and for family.
Yeah.
So either I'm going to shift to that route or I'm going to revert back to my mother, and then I'm 14, 15, 16 years old and wondering why my identity and my purpose hasn't been pulled out of me because the mom is not equipped to do that.
Yeah. Or why I've been labeled as trouble.
Exactly.
Which is
or
what
at
most
risk.
men feel at risk, right? So I think some of our listeners hearing this, some of you listeners and some of you guys watching on YouTube, I mean, you know what it means to be God's man.
Yeah.
And in your church right now, all the nursery workers, all the pre-K workers, all the children's ministry workers are females. You need to get in there.
Absolutely.
You need to go volunteer. You need to show up at your kids' school.
That's right.
You need to be present. You need to show them that no. Men can fill these spaces and lead by example. What it means to be a man, to be created in God's image and be uniquely designed. And let boys be boys. Bring some wooden swords to the playground, man.
Absolutely.
Let them smack each other around.
Let them fight.
Yeah.
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 Take a lick.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It's a good word, bro.
It really is.
Hey,
Yeah.
my uncles would do that with us growing up. Who the toughest? Go figure it out. You might not be today, but you can live to do it again tomorrow.
Hey, when Calvin and Oliver go at it every now and then, I'll be slow to break it up.
Yeah.
I'll be slow to break it up. They need to know how to do that. What is a go-to parenting book? What is a go-to podcast when we think about raising up healthy boys that you can recommend to the listeners?
Well, the first one I'm going to recommend, podcast, is BetterMan. It's the one you're looking at.
Absolutely.
So if you need some
This
quick
is the best.
go-tos,
This is the
learning,
best parenting podcast you're going to see.
This is the
That's
place
right.
for you to go.
Let them fight.
That's right. Let them fight.
That's right. Take a look. Give him some wooden swords.
Right.
That's
Take a
it
lick
right
and
there.
keep
That's
on
our
taking.
parenting method here. That's right.
But then Raising a Modern Day Knight. It's a book that my wife bought for me when I think my son was 1.
Shout out to Robert Lewis,
Yeah,
the
shout
GOAT.
out to Robert Lewis, the GOAT. 50 years in the game. Anyway, we did a ceremony for my son, a year ago? When
Yeah.
he turned 13 or 14 years
Bro, it
old.
was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago. It
was powerful too, bro.
Yeah. Just basically teaching dads how to raise up their sons in the fear and admonition of the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And reject passivity
Yep.
and to lead courageously.
I can't remember all of them, but yeah, that's it. Yeah. But man, I got to do that again with Drew
That's it.
coming up in 6-8 months.
Well, I got Malachi
Right.
in a year or two.
Yeah. It's real.
Manny, what's your go-to?
Shipping room, effective parenting in a defective world.
Come
Raising
on.
kids that will stand out from the crowd is I know Chip. He's a good guy. I've seen him parent as I've grown up. He's older than me, but I've seen his kids as well. He knows what he's talking about. It's a biblical book, just in the sense of there's a lot of Bible in it. And he used to be president and walked through the Bible years ago, and so he's a good guy. So good book.
Yeah, Isaac, what do you got? What do you got in that realm?
For me, back to the podcast, I would say focus on the family.
Yeah, that's
Parenting
good.
podcast, you got the Christian aspect to it, but you also got some practicality
That's good.
on how to raise your children.
Yeah. Practical Shepherding is good. Great book. Paul Tripp. Bodie Bachum's book, The Family Shepherd. Phenomenal. And Bodie knows how to raise up young men. That's really good. Our guy Ken Evans over at Manhood Journey.
KE.
Give Ken a shout out.
Yeah,
That's a great website. Podcast, Dad Tired. And even the Manhood Journey podcast is really good, father and son. So, man, check out those resources. Pray for me. I got to find a school that doesn't have naps.
And they don't
Homeschool.
let you tree weed.
Homeschool. I can tell him not to tree weed.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, bro.
Manny just ain't been caught yet.
Listen, if he get caught, he going to jail.
There's gonna be a lot wrong with it then.
Hey, but at the end of the day, man, let boys be
That's
boys.
it.
There's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with being a boy. I teach my boys to say, they will look in the mirror and they say, I love being a man.
Absolutely.
And I'm grateful God made me
Yep.
a man.
That's
and man, I hope you guys know that. Listeners, tell yourself, I love being a man. There's nothing wrong with God's design for manhood and masculinity. We love y'all. We'll see you next week.
Do you have questions? Submit your questions to the BetterMan podcast team for an upcoming episode. Email info@betterman.com. Subject line, podcast question.